Welcome everyone. So this video I'm going to be covering the Fever and Sparks game. This was a very good game. And another upset. Boy, this has been such, the Mystics. I don't know if the Mystics and the Vegas was an upset, because they're both pretty even. But the other day we had like 4 upsets. And it's just, but that's telling you that the league is, despite records, there's a lot of teams that are pretty even, and given the particular night or day, whenever they're playing, a team can outperform another team. And, the Sparks are a really good team. I mean, they have talented players, and they have just been losing. I mean, I think their record before this, 4 wins. They have done what a lot of Indiana fans will say Indiana did this game. And this time the Sparks actually pulled it out. And you might want to say, yeah, okay, the Fever faded at the end, but I don't know, you watch the game and it looked to me like the Sparks really put their foot on the gas between Plum and Azurá Stevens. Azurá Stevens is, no one really mentions her that much, but she's 6'6", and she's athletic. She played really well in Unrivaled. I was like, where has she been? And, she's been playing pretty well for them, but they haven't been able to pull it out. In this game they did. And basically, Azurá Stevens kept Aaliyah Boston in check in this game. Because Aaliyah Boston in the last game had over 20 points. This game, I'm going to check, but I think she only had 13. So you had Dearica Hamby, and you had Azurá Stevens dealing with Aaliyah Boston. And Indiana just didn't have, other than Aaliyah Boston, you have Natasha Howard, but she's more of a forward on the wing, more so than, down low. Although, she can be down there, but she's just not tall enough to go up against 6'6" and, what LA has. And so we had, let's see here. Indiana was up in the first quarter. They were up at halftime. The Sparks only scored 10 points in the second quarter. So I'm sure they made some halftime adjustments and stuff. And, the Fever had the lead to begin with. And then, and they still in the third quarter outscored them. So they outscored them, well, the Sparks outscored them by 1 in the first. But the Indiana outscored them in the second and the third. But then in the fourth, I think, what was probably going on for the Sparks was, okay, we're not doing this again. We're too talented, we're too experienced, we're not letting this happen again. And they outscored Indiana 35-17. And it wasn't like, you look at some stats here. Indiana only had 13 turnovers. That's not horrible. So I don't know if I necessarily blame it on Indiana not performing. I think the Sparks just put their foot on the gas. So you had Rakia Jackson with 14 points, you had Hamby with 14, you had Stevens with 23, Plum had 21, and then they had Shea Petty got 5, King had 4, Mercedes Russell and Emma Cannon had a basket apiece. So, and rebounds were even. They had 34. The Fever had 31. So, and the Sparks actually had more turnovers. They had 19, and the Fever had 13. So, I think this was the Sparks, because they've been doing what basically you think Indiana just did. They've been doing that a lot, which explains their now 5-11 record. Indiana's now 7-8, and you look at points in the paint. The Sparks were 42-28. The Indiana just didn't have enough to deal with what the Sparks have down low, and it's just the makeup of the team. So points for the Fever, Lexi Hull had 6. She's usually been contributing more, so they would have needed more out of her. Howard had 13. Aaliyah Boston only had 12 points. She had 10 rebounds, but 12 points. And, Indiana, especially without Caitlin Clark, is not going to win when Aaliyah Boston only scores 12 points. Kelsey Mitchell did what she could. She got 20. Ari McDonald contributed. She had 14. Sophie Cunningham had 10. So they had 5 people in double figures, but it just wasn't enough for the push in the fourth quarter that the Sparks had. And they just were, when you watch the game, it looked like the Sparks were like, yeah, no, we're taking this. They weren't going to be denied. And, that was pretty much it. And, good for the Sparks. Good for the Sparks. And, it's another game for the Fever. And I don't know if they have enough to battle with these teams that have multiple tall players. Boston can handle one, because she's 6'5", I believe, but you have multiple taller players, multiple post players, like Atlanta. When the Fever play Atlanta, but Atlanta blew it the other day. They didn't even use their tall players. So, I don't know. It's, like I said, there's a lot of talent on all these teams, and it's a matter of who wants it more. Who says, nope, sorry, today's our day. And sometimes that's what it comes down to. So, anyway, we got a full slate of games. 5 games for Friday nights on Ion. And another, wonderful day of basketball for all of us that just love basketball. So, we'll see you next time.